especially the people here and everyone. Welcome to all those new people participating online. This is the HRM Chapter's first webcast, and we hope to continue this throughout the year. All webcasts will be archived, so if you can't tune in to the whole thing tonight, you can find it on the ssns.ca website. We're going to do our regular meeting format. We have our presenters, who I will introduce in just a moment. During the presentation, the folks here in Halifax will be able to ask the questions during the presentation. For you folks that are on the webcast online, you can type in your questions, and we're going to leave the last 10 or 15 minutes open just for the questions online. So we are on a tight time schedule. We want to finish the presentation and all questions by 8 o'clock. So after the presentation, what we'll do is we'll just close the webcast, and then after here in Nova Scotia and Halifax, we'll continue with our regular hour of discussion. So I'd like to, right now I'll present, this is Cathy. We have Cathy Stevens, and Cathy is a certified psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner. That is a mouthful. And we have Loretta Whitehorne, a certified mental health nurse, and they are both with Capital Health. And our topic tonight is recovery and psychosocial rehabilitation practice. Thank you. Okay.
In Capital Health here in Halifax. Their offices are in the Bethune building at the VG site. And in the center, we provide a variety of education programs to healthcare professionals across the province. And so we have a provincial mandate. And when our center first started back in 2002, 2003, we only worked with registered nurses. And so that's why the name of our center is the Registered Nurses Professional Development Center. Over the years, though, we've expanded beyond that, and we now provide education to a variety of healthcare professionals. And so at the center, we have three mental health education programs. We have one that focuses on suicide risk assessment and intervention. We have one for psychiatric mental health nurses. And we have one on recovery and promoting recovery and psychosocial rehabilitation in practice. And so tonight we're going to talk to you about some of the information from that course that we share with healthcare providers across the province in order to help them understand a little more about recovery and about changing their practice to have a recovery focus. So that sound all right? So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about recovery, and I think probably some of that you may be very familiar with. And then Cathy's going to talk a little more specifically about psychosocial rehabilitation practice. So in our first slide, you'll see that we're going to start off by testing your knowledge a little bit. And I think for the people online, there might be a bit of a typo in your
next slide.
Oh, in the next slide.
No.
This one is good.
Okay.
It's in this one.
Oh, we did this one. Okay, so it says test you knowledge.
Oh,
for the online people see that. But so this is a question I'm going to throw out to you as a group. So recovery from mental illness means that the illness is cured. Is that true or false from your perspective? You Are you familiar with this? Yes,
False.
yes, that's absolutely true. And so there's really not a connection between recovery and cure from an illness. So we'll talk a little bit more about that one. And so then the next one, it's not possible to recover from an illness such as schizophrenia. True or false?
False.
False. Right, absolutely. Certainly, we have lots of evidence that people with schizophrenia go on to recover. So, just to talk a little bit about recovery and what recovery is, certainly in the literature there are many definitions of recovery, but we like this one by Patricia Deegan, and she says that recovery is a process, it's a way of life, an attitude, and a way of approaching the day's challenges. It's not a perfectly linear process, so it's not, a straight road, but there may be lots of ups and downs and bumps along the way. But the need is to meet the challenges of the disability and to reestablish a new and valued sense of integrity and purpose within and beyond the limits of the disability. The aspiration is to live, work, and love in a community in which one makes a significant contribution. So recovery is really about moving forward and getting on with your life despite the fact that you have a serious illness.
Has anyone seen Patricia Deegan? And when she is incredible. If you ever get an opportunity, Patricia Deegan is a woman that has a diagnosis of schizophrenia. She can tell her story in the most incredible way. She talks about how she grew up and lived in a group home, how the most she could do would go grocery shopping with her mom, and to push a cart was a big deal for her. Patricia Deegan then moved on and moved out and moved up, and Patricia Deegan now has her own consulting company. She is PhD. She travels the world talking about recovery and psychosocial rehab. She is incredible to hear. We brought her to a conference here in Halifax. We'll let people come in and get settled with PSR Nova Scotia.
They can go right around this chart. You can go behind the wall. I see better.
Now, if you ever have an opportunity to hear her, she's out of Toronto, I think now, but she is truly inspirational to listen to, and to hear her story, and to she is recovering, certainly in my estimation. And she charges a minute to come now to speak.
She will be a speaker at the upcoming Peer Support National Conference in Halifax, April 30th to May 2nd.
Fabulous. This year?
This year.
Awesome. That's good. Patricia Deegan? Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, I just had to throw that out because she, if you have a chance to see her, she's amazing, and truly has a good story.
So there certainly are some common themes in the recovery process, and one of them is that recovery is a personal journey. So it's really different for every person, and that's true for people with an illness and people without an illness. Life is different for all of us, and we travel through it at different paces and in different ways. And certainly if you're moving through life with an illness and moving forward and growing in your life, that will be different for every individual person. And it's really a process as well. People often say, well, how will I know when someone's recovered? And it's not really necessarily an outcome that you reach this point where you're now recovered, but it's about a process of moving forward in your life and growing and changing and being involved in life in the way that you want to, and accomplishing your goals and the things that you want in your life, despite the fact that you have an illness that you have to contend with along the way. And certainly another one of the themes in recovery is that there's a focus on the person's strength. And we all have lots of challenges and difficulties, But rather than just focus on those, in recovery we really try and focus on to people. I mean, we don't recover people. Recovery is something that a person does themselves, and sometimes they will need support in that process, and that support can come through psychosocial rehabilitation. But some people go on and recover and regain things in their life without the need of formal support.
Or in spite of formal
Or
support.
Yeah, more in spite of.
Yeah, right. And that often their supports come from the informal system, from their families, from their friends, from the people in their communities. And certainly the focus is on growth. It's not about sort of staying where you're at, but about growing and moving forward, as we all do in our lives. So there's really a focus on growth and what are the goals that you want to achieve, and what things do you want to change in your living and your working and your socializing environments. And so that really is what recovery is about. It's about that focus on moving forward and growing and achieving goals. Certainly there is lots of evidence that recovery occurs. This is not just something that, we sort of make up, yes, people will recover. We have lots of certainly personal accounts of individuals, and someone like Patricia Deegan is just one example of someone who can tell you her own story, and there's probably people in this room who can tell you their story of moving forward in their lives and achieving their goals. So there's lots of those. There's also lots of research studies as well. Certainly long-term studies of schizophrenia. There was a time probably when people thought that, that someone with an illness like schizophrenia couldn't recover. And certainly we have lots of evidence and research that that's no longer true. That people do go on and achieve their goals and make significant strides in their life and achieve the things that they want in their life. And there are lots of evidence-based practices that can be used to support people in the recovery process as well. There are things like clubhouses, community treatment programs, peer support, supported employment. These are all evidence-based practices that we know help people to move forward. That is sort of the evidence that we have that recovery occurs. And so now Cathy's going to talk specifically about psychosocial rehabilitation, but before we do that, are there any questions about, just generally about recovery and what recovery means?
I bet we're kind of preaching to the choir with this group, because you guys are pretty up on what recovery is, I would assume. I don't think we're
anything new.
Anything new. But I think one thing that we try to do with our education practice is trying to get more and more healthcare providers on the same page about what recovery is, right? And about what psychosocial rehab and the opportunities of psychosocial rehab and practices like that can support recovery, so that we can help folks to move forward and to grow beyond.
The law enforcement should be more educated on mental health issues. I don't know if you guys ever heard. You might heard of the Michelle Ben case.
Mm-hmm.
I mean she should have never been charged, I think.
And I think the issue about the law, and I can speak because of have been a traditional psychosocial rehab service. Assertive community treatment teams have had some elements of that. Certainly some supported education and supported housing have all been. And those are various parts around the province that are available now. What we've done in our work with folks from around the province in helping teach nurses and social workers and OTs, and we've had peer support folks take our course. So what we try to do is help people to understand what those values are, so whatever practice they're providing, or whatever support they're providing, they may be providing it from a certain value base and a certain way of looking at people. So we're just not looking at people as illness, or looking at people as not being able to reach whatever goals people may want to work on, but it's really about trying to engage with people to figure out what's important to somebody, to help them develop the life that they want, right? So when we look at the values and principles, this is kind of a throw together of all of them, but so what PSR is based on is that PSR practitioners or services really convey hope and respect. So those are the key pieces. And they believe that everybody has the capacity to learn and grow. So sometimes hope can be hard to find if you're in the midst of living with illness and you're in the midst of dealing with all kinds of symptoms and difficult things. So sometimes our job is just to hang on to that hope for people, to let people know that, yeah, things can change and things can get better. Another part of PSR is really recognizing culture and diversity, and making sure that we understand people's cultural diversity, so that you're not pegging everybody in the same hole kind of thing, right? So we can really understand what it means to individuals of different cultures, of different backgrounds, of what's important. Engaging in processes of informed and shared decision making. So I think one of the key things is sometimes you hear people talk about PSR, and I know when we're teaching, people think, oh, PSR, yeah, that means the person gets to do whatever they want to do, and you're just going to say, yep, we're going along with it, right? And that's really not the case. I think all of us in life, I always say, I'd love to go to work every day in my jammies, but I can't. There are certain societal rules that I abide by, and I have to abide by. That's really no different. So I think, but it's a matter of us understanding what the consequences are of our decisions, to make sure that we have the right, any one of us, to make decisions in our life. But I think it's also important that people are provided with all the information that they need to make the decisions in their lives, regardless of whether you have an illness or you don't have an illness. But that's important. Ultimately, if you're an adult, it's your decision to make. I think my job as your support is to make sure that you have all the information you need to make that decision a wise decision, right? The other piece is shared decision making, and I think that's it. For a long time in traditional practice, it's I'm the provider, I'm the expert, I'm telling you what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to go. PSR practice talks a lot more about shared decision making, right? It's your life. I can provide some support and some expertise in some areas, but you're the expert in your life. Right?
How well supported and embraced is that by the physicians and clinicians?
Good. I mean, it's a lot better than, I've been around 20 years with CDHA, and it's a lot more, you see a lot more of that, I do now, than that. I would think Steve may agree with that. I think it's certainly a more accepted, recovery is a more accepted philosophy. Certainly met some really great docs in practice that really work in partnership with people, around medication issues, around that, you guys all, those are big issues, right? But we're willing to negotiate and willing to really work with folks. So I've seen a change. I mean, we still get lots of people taking our class. We're still plugging away out there. So, I mean, is it all utopia? No. Nope. But, but I think people understand it more, and that's an important part. The shared decision making can always be the challenge in that, I'm thinking, building on strengths and capacities, again, that's what it's all about, is helping people to develop the skills, support that they need to get to where they want to get to in life. And our job and not just living in community, not just having an apartment in the community, right, or a space in community, but being a part of a community. PSR practice really looks at how you help people engage in their community and actually become an active participant like all of us. Because one of the key components of PSR is not just having people that are paid to be in people's lives, the people that are in people's lives that are living with these various illnesses, right? So it's helping people to become a natural part of their community and building those natural community supports around them. Self-determination and empowerment is another big one, right? So helping people to develop those skills, to make their own decisions, to speak up, to be a part, fully engaged in their life. Promoting the development of personal support networks by utilizing natural support. So that's another biggie. Again, the natural support is not dumping everything on family, you know, but the way of helping to build and support people and their families and their natural communities so that we can increase that empowerment, increase that capacity, and help people develop those skills themselves so that they have the skills within to be able to move forward. Improving quality of life, all aspects of your life, that's a pretty common one. Health and wellness, it's really about trying to move beyond. The reason that they talk a lot about strengths focused in PSR practice is because the more you can build on people's strengths rather than on their deficits, right, the more strength you can get, right? So if we really look at what people want in their lives and the things that are important to them, then, and build on that, then I think you're getting a lot further ahead than saying, let's look at your problems, right? Who wants to talk about your problems all the time, right? We need to talk about what's important in your life and help you find those strengths. And everybody has strengths. I don't care how ill you are. I don't care, you know, any of that. Everybody has strengths and has abilities. So part of PSR practitioner work is really being able to help draw those out and help support people that way. And evidence-based practice, promising emerging best practices. So it's not just kind of sitting on our laurels and sitting back. It's making sure that what we're doing is helping people, and also that it's kind of the cutting edge stuff, the peer support stuff, which has grown in the last number of years, right? And with the commission speaking so much about peer support and PSR and recovery-oriented stuff, I mean, that's what keeps you moving forward too. The last one is really that services are available whenever people need them, where and when people need them. And that they're well coordinated, integrated with other psychiatric, medical, holistic treatments and practices. Now that sounds a little airy-fairy because we got a ways to go. But, you know.
All of the cost.
Yeah. But that's something to strive for, right? And I think we're getting better at that. I think in system-wise, right? People are breaking down some silos. You know, there's times when people couldn't talk from here and there. I think that's getting better. Providing services where people are, for the most part, hopefully is getting better too, that people don't have to always come to such and such a service at such and such a time. So those are kind of the driving principles and values of psychiatric rehabilitation, psychosocial rehabilitation practice.
Whoops.
Oh. I don't know what's happening. Oh, we're back.
They got a life
Okay.
of their own.
Okay. So when we talk about, one thing that we teach in our course is about PSR process. And it really is helping people to look at, to focus on the four main areas of all of our lives, right? Living, learning, working, and socializing. So when you think about anything in life, it kind of fits into those four categories. And those are the areas that psychosocial rehab practice really looks at. It looks at help people looking at those areas of their life, seeing if they're successful in those areas and satisfied in those areas. And there's all kinds of exercises that you can do with folks in coming through that and helping people to process that and to figure out, are you satisfied in that? Are you successful in that? If you're not successful, if I give an example of living. There was an example of a fellow that was always, when he'd get out, he'd be in hospital, he'd be discharged from hospital into a boarding house. And it never was successful. He'd end up going in, sharing a room with 4 other people things never worked out. So it was a bouncing back and forth. So finally, people kind of started to talk to him a little bit about what was important to him, rather than just what was available, And what was important to him was that privacy was a huge issue for him. He was a very private individual. So no wonder living in a room with 4 other people, where privacy doesn't exist, right? So that wasn't successful. So I think the more we can look at what's important to people and help people clarify that stuff, what's important to them themselves, because sometimes those are hard questions. We often ask the folks that we're teaching, who, are fairly well-educated folks, to identify their own strengths. And you talk about a room get quiet, it's a hoot, because people just, they struggle with it, right? It's hard for us and to think about what we're good at and what our strengths are. Imagine what it's like when we ask people that don't even think about if they have any strengths, right? So that's the toughie. But it's really important. These are key areas to look at success and satisfaction as part of the PSR process.
Could you rephrase the last sentence, please? Success and satisfaction of person key elements to assess. I'm not quite sure what it means.
Okay. When part of the process is doing a lot of assessment with people, they talk about, right, in the PSR. So really looking at how successful somebody is in whatever area you're looking at with them, and how satisfied they are with that. Those are the areas to assess, to help people work through that. So that's what I mean by assessing that. Really, it's kind of a funny word, but it's really about helping people look at, am I satisfied with my living right now? Am I very successful at it? Well, I'm getting evicted next week, so I'm not very successful. So I'm not very happy. So maybe I need to look at what my other options are.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff we mean.
Thank you.
Okay. These are key elements, certainly from our perspective, of the PSR process, and a sense of readiness to make changes, and taking the time to work with somebody about helping to develop that sense of readiness, right? I think all too often, or it can happen, is that if somebody's really not sure, they say, well, that person has no goals, or that person's too sick to set goals, right? We don't buy that. We don't believe in that. I think anybody, that means you need to do more work in trying to engage with that person, right? From my perspective anyway, and helping that person to get to a point of readiness. Because readiness is different for all of us, right? Or making changes in our lives. What we try to do is help people think about ways that they can engage with somebody. And services need to be aware of that takes time, right? That's not going to happen in a, half an hour session once a month, right? You need to have the time to develop a relationship with somebody. That's real key. Some of the ways that we teach folks how to do that is helping people talk about values, doing some value exercises, digging out some old value clarifications, helping people understand what's important to them. And because that could be a hard thing to ask too. If you ask any of us, what are your values? You can name your top 4 values. I think, well, I don't know. So there's certain exercises you can do with folks to figuring it out. There's one that we've done a lot with, okay, you're building a house. And you have 3 main rooms, how would you design that house? What would be the important rooms, right? Some people would say, well, I really want a big living room, I like the fireplace or whatever. Have people together and engaging. So those are all kinds of ways that we can work through figuring out what's important to people and helping people think about that. So when you're making decisions, you're making decisions based on stuff. Motivational interviewing. I don't know if you guys probably have had speakers in about motivational interviewing.
Over the years, but some people may not be familiar with the term.
It's a good way. Addiction Services works a lot with motivational interviewing, really working with people where they're at and seeing about how motivated you are to make changes in your life and helping work through processes like that. So motivational interviewing is another really key. We don't teach a whole course of motivational interviewing. We kind of give a little snippet and encourage people to take another look at it because it really is helping people think about change and how they want to make change. Encouraging hope is another. If there's one thing that I think being a cheerleader in people's lives and a support is really important. Sometimes it's up to us as providers or supporters, whatever, to hold the hope right? And sometimes, you know, maybe my job is to hold on to the hope. Because you're gonna get it back, because, you know, I know that, you're gonna get there someday. But maybe you don't have any hope now, but I can hang on to it for you. That's the key part. And that's all part of the supportive relationship. And I think if there's anything that we try to teach is helping people to really develop a supportive relationship with folks and to really get to know people as people. That goes an awful long way in providing support. So that's the crux of PSR too, is really doing that. And that's hard. It's hard to teach. I mean, we all get involved in healthcare as professionals to help, right? And that's why you're involved. But it's really getting to know people in a different way. And I think that's what we try to promote through recovery and PSR practice. Getting to know people as people. Because ultimately it comes down to that. Make sense? The other part is recovery planning, and that comes out of PSR. Sometimes, like PSR, we teach it as an overall values and principles of psychosocial rehabilitation, a way of looking at people, a way of working with people, and how people do that is all very different in how they do planning. Recovery planning is something that's used a fair amount. Wellness planning is another term people use. There's all kinds of different kind of toolkits, kind of workbooks that people may use. But the key parts I think that we need to look at in recovery planning is looking at the holistic, again, view of somebody. And so taking into consideration their housing, their education, their vocational. Do they want to work? What do you want to do in your life? Vocational also includes volunteering. It includes whatever somebody's doing to feel productive in their day. Social. Treatment. Treatment's another big part of it. I think treatment and psychosocial rehabilitation, we talk about medical treatment, like medications and things. Many moons ago, people would always look at them separately, right? Like, oh, you got the medication over here and you got PSR over here. I think we try to, it's all integrated, right? I mean, you have to have good treatment in order to move forward in your life, all of us, right? If we're not healthy, it's hard for us to move forward and to reach the goals we want to. So that's a big part of it. Self-care is another huge piece, helping people to learn about illness, learn about their own self, learn about, their own symptoms, learn about their own management of that. That's all important because as you're developing your skills, that's all a big part of it. And these are just, again, I think we've probably said this kind of, but the part of recovery planning, working with somebody is engaging in a relationship. And you can't say that enough, I don't think, because I think it's such an important, we assume that we're in a relationship with somebody, we're creating a relationship, but it takes a lot of work sometimes if you're somebody that has not engaged in a relationship, somebody that's had so many maybe failures in their life or perceived failures, or things haven't worked. An individual may deal with illness a lot, may deal with a lot of symptoms, may deal with a lot of doors closing, life changing. So it
or
takes
both
a lot.
parties have an issue like a mental health issue.
Pardon me?
Like there are being in a relationship that both partners could have.
Sure, that can be difficult too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm talking more of the relationship between like a support person or a doctor or a nurse or whoever in somebody's life. But it's an important piece. Also making sure that we focus on strengths and we help people to draw out their strengths and understand their strengths. Asking people what their dreams are, right? Like, we all have dreams. We've all, people had dreams, I'm sure, before they ended up with a diagnosis, and they have dreams after. It doesn't stop you from having, your dreams may change. You may have to change how you reach those dreams. Your dreams may be different. But I think it's important for us to be able to talk to people about what those dreams are. And then looking at skills and supports that need to be developed or relearned. That's another key part of PSR practice. Figuring out what the goal is and where you want to go, but then what's it going to take, breaking that down, right? So what's it going to take to get to that goal? And what kind of skills are needed? So the skills may be, learning a bus, taking the bus route. Getting a bus pass is an important support for some way of getting to the bus. So those are all, they may sound little and small, but those are things that really need to get broken down, and then people need to be able to learn those steps if that's what they need to reach that goal. And our job is to help to do that. Right? timeframes and accountability is huge too, so that it's not just airy-fairy again, it's set down, and that's what we use worksheets and planning out with an actual plan that is the person's plan to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is when I'm going to do it, this is my target date, this is who's going to be accountable for that, right? So if I say I'm going to help somebody do something, then my name goes down there, right? And there's a date on that, or whatever. So it's just a way of planning to go ahead. I used to work with folks when I did case management practice, and it would be great because some people really loved having a tool. I remember one fellow, he used to fold up his plan. His plan was about this big by the end of it, but once a week we'd get together and he'd pull that plan out and it'd be all disheveled, but it was important to him, right? And he knew his plan, and that's what we followed. So I think it's just whatever works for somebody. If you can get something to get a hook, then that's what you go with, right? The key part again is the family and friends and community, and I think we're getting better at that. Certainly in practice from having family involvement. I know CDHA seems is with the Meridian family work, and what you guys are doing with the family work, right? I mean, it's getting so much better and growing that way.
And that's going through the province also.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard fabulous. I've heard the Meridian folks talk about it. I've spoken to some folks that have been doing it, and I know from staff perspective, people really like it. They're getting some real satisfaction because families are the ones that are there all the time. We may be in somebody's life for this amount of time, but families are involved forever, right? So we need to be supporting the families. Okay, that's PSR. Questions about that? Does that make sense? Does that ring true? Do you see it anywhere? Yeah, good. That's good. Yeah.
I find in our situation that our son's doing really well, and he's been out of the hospital for about 5 years now, continually. And the only kind of support that he gets is from us, unless we specifically ask for it, and then it's or not. And they sent him to the occupational therapist, and our son told them what he would like to do, and they said, okay, you find out what you need to do and then come back. Now, is that the way it's supposed to work, or is that the way it works? That was, and he was, when you have schizophrenia, it's very hard to connect the dots.
Yeah.
The beginning and the end is overwhelming and bewildering, and to have that kind of response was very, very disappointing, and he just sort of, I guess, where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. So it's easier not to start.
Yeah, which is exactly kind of what happened.
Yeah. Now, there are other services out there in terms of like employment and supported employment. So there are programs, certainly in Metro, that do that. I mean, there's that people can refer themselves to, right? And they offer support to help people figure out what they want to do. There's like Lake City Employment Services in Dartmouth. They have the woodworking thing, but they also have a whole community employment support program where they help people figure out what they want to do, right? Help people do resumes and then make some connections, that kind of stuff. There's Metro Works at Bears Road. It used to be Teamworks Cooperative.
Yeah.
And they're for a number of folks with disabilities.
Yeah, I guess the point is, that's great. But that's sort of where it ended, is a discussion like this, and if it's directed towards us, of course, it doesn't do anything, and it wasn't directed at that time. Now, that may have been just a particular case, too, I'm not sure. But it seems to me that there are skills, and our son is very, he lives independently in his own place, and so he does very well. But it seems that there are some life skills that aren't being addressed. If he had a broken leg, he'd go to rehab or something and get assistance one-on-one for hours for that issue.
Yeah.
But with the mental illness, it seems that the skills that he needs to sort of brush up on sometimes aren't there.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what PSR would be doing, you know, that somebody would be working individually or in group sometimes, but looking at developing those skills and helping somebody figure that out. It sounds like that's not what happened there. There are some services out there that provide a lot more individual one-on-one case management, right? Because that is available in the clinic on a limited basis sometimes, I think.
And there's a lottery of you getting a person that understands. I mean, I, qualify for blah, blah, and then I went to it. I end up, like, I spend my whole hour and a half that, somebody's paying $178 an hour for, giving the person the information.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, duh. And then, okay, it's time to go. I said, but you haven't referred me to anything, you haven't found me a job, you haven't, figured out, if there's any money for training. Oh, well, I don't know. And I was like,
Well, then sometimes it speaks then you need to do some more education out there to some of these folks
and,
too.
and one of them, I mean, they actually paid me because it was, a federal thing assessing how programs work. So they interviewed me. And at the end of the thing, the woman said, "And what job would you like?" I said, "Yours." And she said, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, because I can spot a fake."
Thank you, Amy. We have just maybe one last question from this side, and then we're going to go to the online questions.
Probably at the end.
I'm sorry. You have some. I'm sorry. We're not.
Oh, we have
another
blurb that.
Okay, that's fine. Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep. We can take another 5
Because
minutes.
we just wanted
Sure.
to go through a little bit about, so you understand what we're trying to do to support some of that stuff, so we can get more and more people working in the field, doing this type of work, right? Because I think that's what we need.
Let me make a comment
Yeah.
to these ladies and gentlemen here. I think the province's certified peer support specialist program, which is just coming on now, and I'm one of those people which is going through the certification process right now, and it's a crying need for that sort of support. Very ordinary, mundane stuff, but it's so important if it's not done. So, we're really looking forward to it.
Beautiful, you're so right.
And the peer support is throughout the province also.
And it's such a recognized thing, finally, that it's getting formal support, right?
Yeah, we're the first province in Canada to have it as part of the formal health care
Very
system.
exciting, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And so I think this last piece here, again, is just talking a little bit about the promoting recovery psychosocial rehab program that we offer. And it is a 29-week part-time distance program. And within that program, certainly there's a lot of knowledge that people gain. And we also do work with practicing with actors, and we visit people and see them in their clinical practice, and so really work with people to help them change their practice so that they will have much more of a recovery focus and will actually start to do psychosocial rehabilitation with people. And in the program, this is some of the content that we cover. We certainly look at the foundations of recovery, PSR community support. We look at assessment, intervention, and outcomes to support recovery. We look at supporting the recovery journey. We look at in and with community resources. talk about advocacy and how to navigate the system.
It's a
So-
huge one.
Yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
can tell you, I advocate on a daily basis on many different levels within our system,
Sure.
kids aging under protection, senior citizens.
Yeah.
The kids in Nova Scotianers can't read or write.
Mhm.
So,
It's huge, right?
It's humongous.
And
I-
navigating.
And I'm going through recovery, and I don't have any services at all. I don't have medication, I don't have psychology working with me, so it's overwhelming, but what you guys are doing really has touched me because you care. You absolutely care that these people that I witness on a daily basis being treated like less than a person. So thank you, really, thank you.
The four of us here are from the Friendship Club in Truro, Psychosocial Friendship Club.
Yeah.
That's great. People.
There you go.
We've worked with some of the folks that have worked down there. Actually, we were just talking about Audrey.
Yeah,
Yeah, we knew Audrey back in the one of the beginning parts of our program. We were thrilled to see her in the paper.
Yeah.
She wasn't so thrilled.
Oh, I wasn't so thrilled either. I was kind of like, but it's actually going well, and the gentlemen that are in our Under the Cold program, one of them has been housed within the last 2 days of a non-government, just a community who cares about these individuals, housed with everything he needs.
Yeah.
So, and then he can continue to come to the house that we've rented just for support. If he needs somebody to go to social services with him so he feels less threatened, then we advocate for him. And this is just me living through the system with no education, but I perhaps have more education because I've lived as a kid in care.
You sure do.
And
You got a lot more experience
Well,
and
not
understanding,
the
right?
political
Yeah.
nightmare we had.
Well, thank you. No, thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah.
Wow, that's for having us.
Okay. Okay.
So one question, is is Promoting Recovery the name of the program for professionals to learn about?
Yes, it's called Promoting Recovery, Psychosocial Rehabilitation in Practice.
Okay, we have some online questions.
Okay,
We've
we're
got
done,
about
yeah.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Are you done? Are you finished?
Yeah. That was just,
Well-
we were just gonna talk a little bit about what's available here in CDHA that
Okay.
we know of.
Yeah.
So CDHA, there's Recovery and Integration Services is one part of the Capital Health Mental Health Program. Under that falls these kinds of services. There's Simpson Landing, which used to be Maritime Hall, right? So there was Coral and Maritime Hall, the rehab units at the Nova Scotia Hospital. Now it's the bungalows. Simpson Landing and Coral Hall is still a unit there. There's the hubs, which used to be the clubhouses, like used to have Connections Clubhouse, New Beginnings. There was one in Sackville. Now there is one in Sackville, so now there's hubs, they call them, and they're kind of all encompassing of case management, former stuff that used to happen at Clubhouse, like a place to develop skills, to learn education, to learn about health, and they do medication there as well, so it's a whole mix of stuff.
So do they work together? Like, if somebody's in Dartmouth and they move to Halifax?
Yeah, I think then they can become a member of that. Now, they do have, I think there's diagnostic criteria associated with the hubs, which is a little bit different than it used to be, but they're
Right.
at least there's something in Sackville now, so that's cool.
Yeah,
Because
that's
there never
really
was.
cool.
The mental health court program, which seems kind of funny to see under a recovery program when you think court, but I'm from mental health court, so
So what is
I know
mental
that.
health court?
it's a court that specifically is about, for folks that may get involved in criminal charges, that their mental health has something to do with that.
Oh, it's Governor Shelby.
But I
Yeah, her.
can't comment on, but,
She has a green,
okay.
thing going on, and then plus she has a whole whack of other
So it's,
health
yeah, so
issues that
it's,
make her, she could be just sitting here like us now, talking, calm could be, next thing you know, she can outburst and whatnot, and
yeah, I can't comment on any individual person,
No.
but for what the court program does fall under recovery focus. There's a community transition program, and there's the forensic units at the East Coast Forensic Hospital that follow a recovery focus as well.
What's the community transition program?
That's a unit out above Quest. There was Quest, which is more of a private, kind of community services funded. It's an inpatient unit for people with more behavioral challenges.
Oh, okay.
And-
Where's it located?
It's out in Memory Lane,
Oh, right.
right?
Okay,
Remember
yeah.
that house? The old Cobblewood Center. Well, Community Transition Programs, a CDHA partnership with Community Services, I think. And it's another unit that way, but more for folks that have more behavioral challenges. So those are the ones, and I know that across the province, there's a variety of stuff. Like there's clubhouses, Friendship Club is a sort of a clubhouse, right?
It is a clubhouse.
Yeah, it is a clubhouse. New Hope was one in New Glasgow, that got started a while ago. There's,
Crossroads.
Crossroads, thank you. So there's a variety of different services. There's all kinds of peer support, supported housing, some case management services. So there are pockets of it all over the place. And I think to me it's more of the values that it's based on than what it, you know, and what it does. So that's it.
It's all sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're ready for questions, I guess.
Excellent.
How many questions do you have there?
There's just one person asking two questions.
Oh,
so far.
great.
Bob and Michelle have asked, is psychosocial rehabilitation just in the metro area?
No, because again, the services that we talked about, the clubhouse services in Cape Breton, Crossroads, New Hope, Friendship Club in Truro, New Hope's in New Glasgow, they all follow the same programs, the same basis and the foundations of psychosocial rehab to varying degrees.
Can you talk specifically about the Beacon program in the Valley?
The Beacon program, yeah, thanks, yeah, that's an awesome program. And the Beacon program is a 6-month, at least, I think it's the program that people can go. It's based on psychosocial rehab. They really work on developing skills and supports for individuals. They move there and live there. It's kind of like a house. And they have all kinds of programming where they're working on helping people develop skills. I saw this really cool presentation of a psychologist from down there.
Do you have any information on that?
I don't, but if you Google it, Beacon program, if you look at Beacon House, Beacon program in the Valley, you can get their whole website. There's a tour, there's all kinds of stuff. So it's a really neat program, and I think they do a lot of really good work. They're working a lot with youth. They're doing a lot of innovative and creative stuff, and they've got a great website. So
What about other PSR work in the Valley?
Well, there's Kentville, Evangeline Club, right, through CMHA.
But is there mental health services providing PSR work?
I think there's
In the Valley?
some. I don't know a lot about the Valley stuff, but I think through their community support. I know I've worked with a couple of folks that, there's one fellow that, he wasn't a peer support worker, but he was a support worker that did a lot of the individual case management, goal setting, that kind of stuff, helping people figure out, like you talked about your son, right, helping somebody figure out, okay, so where are you going to go, and I'll go with you the first time, and let's get this application filled out, that kind of stuff. So I know that happens.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's all right.
Just that I
Steve,
know.
I'm used to you putting me on the spot.
Just that I know where our question is coming from. It's coming from the Valley.
Okay, yeah. And I think through their community support program, you'd find much more of that. And they're going to have a peer support. I think there is a person from the Valley that's being trained as one of the peer support people too. Is there not?
Yeah, every region is,
Yeah.
every authority has got people trained now.
Yeah, fabulous.
They just have to hire them.
Yeah.
One has been hired now.
Yeah.
Province wide have to look at their example as a community for rural Nova Scotia.
Kings County?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Impressed. But I was there and did a speech on my experience as a kid in care, living in 90 foster homes and as a homeless woman within HRM 5 years ago, and what I had to overcome. And I'm still
Excellent.
doing things, but I'm a caucus member for affordable housing and homeless issues and an advocate for a whole bunch of other areas. 'Cause
Good.
It's this big umbrella, but
Good, that's great.
still recovering, hoping to get my dog soon. Because I suffer with pretty bad post-traumatic. But I was there and I was just absolutely amazed at what they're doing in Chambers. It's incredible. They make every single person feel like a person, no matter what their disability is. So I was
Excellent.
impressed. And I wasn't the only one taking it with other people.
Because it started way back in 1980, early 80s, this Canning area, caring for real employment. For free, and you know.
Online question from the Valley again. Regarding transition of care, if somebody was to move from the Valley to the Halifax area, somebody living with a mental illness, I guess the question would be, can somebody be recommended for the PSR type services in this area, having come from the Valley area? In other words, they're receiving services now, mental health services in the Valley, they're moving to Halifax. How smooth might that transition be to get them connected to PSR services in the HRM area?
I know that with community mental health, so if somebody was moving to town, right, and they're in town, all you have to do is call, do your first visit appointment, right? You call and you get a first visit appointment. The hubs. So I would say if the person moves to town and they're living in Halifax, then they can just get a hold of the hub in Halifax, which is the old Connections Clubhouse, right? And make connections there.
Yeah.
So I think self-referrals are very open. So if somebody is motivated enough to want to be able to get themselves connected, I think there's a wait list to be a part of those services. And then what you access of those services, the same with Lang House, right? What you access is up to what you want to do and what your goals are. If there's support's there. That's what I would say.
But again, I'm hearing, I mean, this is wonderful, but again, I'm hearing it is either the family or the person that has to take the initiative. If your caseworker knows you're going to be moving to Halifax, why wouldn't it be the caseworker that says, okay, would you like to join the clubhouse? Yes, I will get in touch. This is where you go. This is who you talk to. Because somebody in that state has great difficulty in continuing the process. And
I'm going to move to a new city. How can I get? That was my interpretation of that. But you're exactly right, right? And that's what people should always be doing as supporters, is helping people to make those connections.
Right.
Because as you said, navigating systems. I mean, it's hard enough for any of us to pick up a phone and to get somebody to answer from a government service, right? I mean, you know, and if you don't have a phone, to leave a number. To call back, or even pushing this button and that button, and if you have disorganized thoughts, and you know, that it should be part of practice.
yeah.
Well, I know CDHA here, Capital Health, is working on transitions of care. I mean, that's a big focus of their mandate now. And I would assume that it would be the same throughout the province. So, I mean, it is important that people be able to transfer from one care to the other, whether it's within HRM or anywhere in the province. But that's something that, you know, I'm sure they're looking at.
Yeah.
So, like everything else, we've got a way to go.
And just a question, how often do you offer the program? Was it 29 weeks?
Yes.
And how many people, how many providers in a rounded year would be taking that?
We only offer it once a year, unfortunately. It starts every January, it goes from January to June, and it varies. This year we have 16 people taking the course, and so we usually have somewhere between 10 and 15 people take the course. Yeah.
And we try to have a mix, like we have, this year we've got a great mix of the folks taking that class because there's a mix of folks that work in inpatient services and people that work in communities. So sometimes community folks that are working in community get it a little bit more, right? They're used to more flexibility, know more of the resources. So that really helps to balance out, to create new ideas and stuff.
And is it an online course? Is that?
No,
No.
No.
Oh.
It's a distance course.
So.
So what that means is people stay in their own areas. They get all kinds. They get 14 different lessons.
Okay.
And then in those lessons are instructional activities. They come together a couple of times during the program to practice skills. So what we do is we have actors that we call them OSCEs, and it's observable, is structure. Somebody about their strengths and draw out strengths, and they have to do that with an actor, and an actor has a certain role they play. And they also, another one of our stations is people have to explain what recovery is in their own words. So that's something else that we try to do. So it's skill-based, and then they go back to their practice, and then we go visit them at the end of their practice to watch them, interact with them, and to be able to look at how they are implementing all those values that we talked about into what they do every day. So that's
So how does somebody from the Truro area get involved with that?
We've had people from Truro take the program, yes. And there is an online component too. There is an online discussion group and that kind of
I'm just,
stuff.
but what's the accountability? Who's following up to see that people are actually putting into practice what they've learned?
right.
Yes, and
That-
certainly, yeah, that's always true for any practice,
Yeah.
and we really don't know that, we know when people end the program,
Needed
No.
to follow through to,
One positive thing is that we have seen people take the course, and then maybe they've worked on inpatient units, they've moved into community practice, right? Because they wanted to get more engaged with people. They wanted to move on to other services and programs where they have that opportunity. So to me, that usually speaks to at least that. And then we've also, they keep sending people back to us, the managers, so, they're paying for people to come and take the course. So I think that's helpful too, is that people believe in it at certain levels, right?
Just to follow up on that, would you say then that the people who are attending the course are there because they really want to, and that might promote their adoption of these techniques?
absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think people are truly interested in psychosocial rehabilitation, and interested in recovery and how to implement that in their practice, and that's why they take the course, to learn how to do that.
But they admit the struggle, right, which is cool too, because people will come and go, I really want to do this, I don't know, but I'd like to change how I do it. So so you're right, like anything, if people have to buy.
Site, the Registered Nurses Professional Development Center, so you can just Google the RNPDC and you'll find information about all the programs that we offer there, and there's contact numbers there as well.
And
And we're
with regard to a specific situation of somebody moving from the to Halifax wanting to get in contact with services here, would you be the contact person, Cheryl, or would there be somebody more specific that they could get in touch with?
Depending on what region.
Yeah, I don't know. Certainly they can contact me and I can see what I can do, right? That's
Okay.
not a problem. I mean, see where I could hook them up. It depends on where they're coming and what they're looking for. But we didn't have our contact information there, but we're both within CDHA.
We can
Thank
get
you.
hold of you through
Yeah,
Steve.
oh, you can get hold of them.
Right, I can get hold, okay. Okay, I think that is going to wrap up our webcast portion. Our next month, we have, just before you go out there on air, we have, next month, we have Dr. Stephen Ayer will be, you're doing,
Involuntary Psychiatric Treatment Act.
Involuntary, right,
That's
involuntary psychiatric treatment act. So stay tuned, we meet the second Monday of each month unless it's a holiday. And then we meet the third Monday, and we will webcast 7 to 8, or shortly after. We webcast our speakers, and then we will have our regular chat, an hour-long discussion. So thank you very much again.
You're
You did a
welcome.
wonderful job.
Thanks for having us.
We will be having you back.
Okay.
Thank you.